Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Krishna.
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvandam Maravindadalaya Darshan Bhagavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundaram Kandar Agom Vigamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam
Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram जय ललित विशाख जय राधे श्याम ललित विशाख जय राधे श्याम जय राधा श्याम सुंदर राधा श्याम सुंदर राधे जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रील प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रील प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल काटे सद्मा वंदमोये साभादना माते वंदमोये साभादना माते जहर प्रसादेवा ये बाबा तोरिया जहा जहर प्रसादेवा ये बाबा तोरिया जहा कृष्ण प्राप्ति है जहाँ आयते कृष्ण प्राप्ति आई जा हरते गुरु मुखा पद्मा वाक्या शितति कोरिया क्या गुरु मुखा पद्मा वाक्या शितति कोरिया क्या हरण करिया माने आशा हरण करिया माने आशा श्री गुरु चरणे रते जय सुभूत भागते श्री गुरु चरणे रते जय सुभूत भागते रति ये प्रसाद पूर्वे सर्व आशा ये प्रसादे पूर्व सर्व आशा चक्षुदान दिला दे जन्म जन्म प्रभु दे चक्षुदान दिला दे जन्म जन्म प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदाम जनर बंधु प्रेम भक्ति जावते अविद्या विनाश जते प्रेम भक्ति जावते अविद्या विनाश जते वेदेगा जहर तरिता वेदेगा जहर तरिता गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदाम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदाम जनर बंधु लोकना लोकर जीवाना लोकना लोकर जीवाना प्रभु करो दया देव मोरे पादो छाया प्रभु करो दया देव मोरे पादो छाया वेदगाद गुच्छु त्रिभुवाना वेदगाद गुच्छु त्रिभुवाना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा प्रभुपा 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 प्रभुपदा श्रील प्रभुपाद गुरु पूजा की जय। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नित्य नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पश्यता देशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचार जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरार्भक्त वृंदा श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरार्भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hey! Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Shukriya. Shukriya.
Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bardari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bardari. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bardari. Gopi Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Banachari Jamunatira Banachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jainatago Premanandi Haribo Jayam Vishnupad Paramamsa Parivrajikacharya Asutar Sata Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Rajbhumi Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Sisi Krishna Balaram Ki Jai, Shishi Gornitai Ki Jai, Shishi Radha Sham Sundar Lalita Vishaka Devi Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Jai Nitai Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 9, titled Mother Yashoda Binds Lord Krishna, Text 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Evam Sandarshita Hyanga. Evam Samdarshita Hyanga. Evam Samdarshita Hyanga. Harina Britya Vashyata. Harina Brityata Harina Britya Vashyata. Harina Britya Vashyata. Sva Vashenapi Krishnena. Swavashenapi Krishnena. Swavashenapi Krishnena. Yasidam Sheshvaram Vashe. Vashedam Sheshvaram Vashe. Yashedam Sheshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Svavashenapi Krishnena Yashedham Sheshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Svavashenapi Krishnena Yasyedham Sheshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Savashenapi Krishnena Yashedam Seshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Savashenapi Krishnena Yasedam Sheshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Svavashenapi Krishnena Yasedam Sheshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Svavashenapi Krishnena Yasedam Sheshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Svavashenapi Krishnena Yasedam Sheshvaram Vashe Evam Samdarshita Hyanga Harina Britya Vashyata Svavashenapi Krishnena Yasedam Sheshvaram Vashe Evam. In this manner, Sandarshita was exhibited. He indeed. Anga, O Maharaj Parikshit. Harina, by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Britya Vashyata, his transcendental quality of becoming subordinate to his servitor or devotee. Svavashena, he who is within the control only of his own self. Api, indeed. Krishnena, by Krishna. Yasya, of whom. idam, the whole universe, sa ishvaram, with the powerful demigods, like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Vashe, under the control. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: O Maharaj Parikshit, this entire universe, with its great exalted demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Indra, is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet the Supreme Lord has one transcendental attribute. He comes under the control of His devotees. This was now exhibited by Krishna in this pastime. Purport: this pastime of Krishna's is very difficult to understand, but devotees can understand it. It is therefore said, Darshayams tad vidham loka atmano bhakta vashyatam. The Lord displays the transcendental attribute of coming under the control of His devotees. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ekyo pyasau rachayutam jagad andakotim yakchaktir asti jagad andachayayad anta andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. By His one plenary portion as Paramatma, the Lord controls innumerable universes with all their demigods, yet He agrees to be controlled by a devotee. In the Upanishads, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead can run with more speed than the mind. But here we see that although Krishna wanted to avoid being arrested by his mother, he was finally defeated, and Mother Yashoda captured him. Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrahma Sevyamanam. Krishna is served by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. Nonetheless, He steals butter like one who is poverty-stricken. Yamaraj, the controller of all living entities, fears the order of Krishna, yet Krishna is afraid of his mother's stick. These contradictions cannot be understood by one who is not a devotee, but a devotee can understand how powerful is unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. It is so powerful that Krishna can be controlled by an unalloyed devotee. This Bhritya Vashyata does not mean that he is under the control of the servant. Rather, he is under the control of the servant's pure love. In Bhagavad-Gita 1:21, it is said that Krishna became the chariot driver of Arjuna. Arjuna ordered him, Senayor ubayor madhye ratam stapaya me chuta. My dear Krishna, you have agreed to be my charioteer and to execute my orders. Place my chariot between the two armies of soldiers. Krishna immediately executed this order, and therefore one may argue that Krishna also is not independent. But this is one's ajnana, ignorance. Krishna is always fully independent when he becomes subordinate to his devotees. This is a display of Ananda Chinmaya Ras. the humor of transcendental qualities that increases his transcendental pleasure. Everyone worships Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he sometimes desires to be controlled by someone else. Such a controller can be no one else but a pure devotee. Om Jnana-timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulam Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We'll read the verse one more time. O Maharaj Parikshit, this entire universe, with its great exalted demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Indra, is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet the Supreme Lord has one transcendental attribute. He comes under the control of his devotees. This was now exhibited by Krishna in this pastime. Such a beautiful verse and purport. I don't know that I can do justice to this. Shishi Krishna Balaram ki jai, Shishi Gornitai ki jai, Shishi Radha Sham Sundar Lalita Vishaka Devi ki jai. As always, I'm very embarrassed to speak in front of so many exalted devotees and seniors. Please have mercy on me. So Krishna is the supreme controller who is ruling the universe, who's ruling all of the great demigods like Indra, like Brahma, like Lord Shiva. But at the same time, his mother is controlling him. We've been hearing Krishna broke the butter pot while his mother was attending to the milk, and he had to be punished, and so she bound him up with many ropes. So it is a great mystery. Prabhupada said it's very difficult to understand how Krishna can be controlled. This is something that only devotees can understand. We know from Bhagavatam, Nanda Maharaj was doing the Indra Jagya. He wanted to do a sacrifice for Lord Indra. Krishna said, why are you doing this sacrifice? Actually, it's not very good for you to do this sacrifice. And somehow he convinced his father, instead of doing this sacrifice for Indra, we should do sacrifice to Govardhan. And so he induced all of the residents of Vrindavan, instead of worshipping Indra, to worship Govardhan Hill. And Indra didn't like it. He was very dissatisfied, and he became very angry. He called the clouds of universal destruction, the Samvartika clouds, to put devastating rainfall onto Vrindavan. And just to save all the residents from that horrible rain, Krishna lifted up Govardhan Hill. All of the residents of Vrindavan came under the shelter of Govardhan Hill for 7 days, so that the rain would not harm the residents of Vrindavan. We all know that story. So, Lord Indra, when he understood the offense that he made, then he became very humble, and he came with the Suravi cow to Vrindavan to beg forgiveness for his terrible mistake. He was saying, this sacrifice is always done to me. The residents of Vrindavan are always doing these sacrifices to me, and you stopped it. And I thought, who is this person? Actually, Indra is a demigod, so he knows something about Krishna, and he thought, but who is this boy? I couldn't understand that you are playing in this village. I couldn't understand, because Krishna is beyond the three modes of material nature, and here you are playing just like a village boy. So I couldn't recognize your position. I became very arrogant and puffed up. Now I can understand who are the people in this village. So like that, Indra apologized. He became humbled. And Krishna established, even in his position as a small village boy, who he is in relation to Indra. Another story was when there was a great demon, Bhaumasura, who was the son of the earth, and he became very dominant as a demon, and even took over a portion of Mount Meru. If you know the description of the Bhumandal, it's a little mysterious. There's a great mountain in the middle of the plain of Bhumandal, and the top of that mountain is a heavenly place where Indra is in charge. And at one point, that Bhaumasura, he had stolen the earrings of the mother of Indra, Aditi. And so there was some complaint against this Bhaumasura, how he's becoming so dominant and influential with some demonic rule. And he stole many valuable things, including those earrings. So Krishna went to rectify the situation by defeating that demon. It's described how his kingdom was protected in a very amazing way by the ingenious architecture of the Mora demon. So Krishna had to kill that 5-headed Mora demon. Maybe that is where he got the name Murari. And then finally he defeated that Bhaumasura demon, and he retrieved the earrings that had been stolen, and he took his wife Satyabhama to the capital city in heaven where Indra was ruling. He personally took to return the earrings of Indra's mother. And it says that Indra received Krishna with a lot of respect, a lot of kindness, a lot of grace when he received those earrings. But on the way out, Satyabhama, she was interested in getting a parijata flower from heaven. Narada Muni had, a little bit in a mischievous way, he gave some parijata flowers to another one of Krishna's wives, Rukmini. He wanted to create some jealousy amongst the wives of Krishna to see how Krishna would manage the situation. And so Rukmini had that beautiful Parijata flower, and Satyabhama didn't have that flower, so she also wanted such a flower, that my husband should also give me such a beautiful flower. And so she expressed that to Krishna while they were in this heavenly city, and Krishna said, "Why you just want one flower? We should take the whole Parijata tree." And so they took that Parijata tree, and Indra really didn't like it. Indra became very angry. And Prabhupada writes in the Krishna book that materialistic people are like this. When it's for their sense gratification, they can be very cultured, very polite, very respectful. You can think of like business people and politicians. They can act in a very nice way and receive others with great respect and culture. But then when there is something against their sense gratification, then they can also show their quality, how they can be cruel, how they can be merciless. And so Indra had behaved very nicely when Krishna was returning the earrings. But when Krishna wanted the Parijata tree, then Indra became very upset. And he fought with Krishna. And so Krishna had to defeat Indra and subdue him. They took that Parijata tree. It was established in the courtyard of the palace of Satyabhama and created a very beautiful atmosphere. So that's another instance how Indra is controlled by Krishna. He wanted to fight with Krishna, but he cannot defeat Krishna. And Brahma, we know the story, after the killing of the Aghasura demon, Krishna went with his cowherd boyfriends to the bank of Yamuna to take their lunch. And somehow the cows had wandered off. And if you have a guest and they're taking prasadam, it's nice if all the arrangements will be made. You shouldn't let the person get up in the middle of their meal. And so Krishna also, he was very sweet and polite like that. He told all of his friends, "No, please, you're in the middle of your meal. Don't get up now. I will take care of the cows." And so Krishna went to try to search out for the cows. And just at that time, Lord Brahma, he thought, "I will play a joke. I'm not sure who is this Krishna." There's a description of Krishna. He was taking prasadam, eating with his left hand. And so everyone knows you cannot eat with your left hand. And so he was, "Who is this Krishna? Let me play a little joke on Krishna." And so just at that time, when Krishna had stepped away from his friends, Brahma thought he could steal all of the cowherd boys and all of the cows as well. And so he wanted to see, how will Krishna adjust to this situation? How will he manage? And what he saw was that all of the boys were still there. What had happened was Krishna personally expanded and took the form of all those cowherd boys, all of those cows, and for 1 year he played in the role of all of those cowherd boys and cows. And Brahma was entirely bewildered, and he also could understand his mistake. He thought it was just some rascal child eating with the wrong hand, but then he could understand. When he went to apologize and pray to Krishna to make up for this offense, Krishna revealed how he showed all of those boys, they manifested their forms as four-handed Vishnu forms. And so Brahma could understand who he was dealing with. So he prayed to Krishna. He said, "Some people will say, I know everything about Krishna." He said, "I don't have anything to say about such people." He said, "For myself, all I can say is that the opulence of Krishna is absolutely beyond my mind and senses." When we would read with Bhubaneshwar Prabhu, sometimes a philosophical point would come out and we couldn't totally understand the point. Or, there would be a question and it wouldn't be completely resolved. So Bhubaneshwar would resolve it. He would say, you can't understand with your puppy dog brain. So Brahma said something like that. I cannot understand with my puppy dog brain. And in another instance, Brahma came to Dwarka to visit Krishna. And he told the guard, please inform Krishna that I have come to meet with him. So the guard came back and said, Krishna is asking which Lord Brahma has come to see him. And I am the four-headed Lord Brahma. So when Brahma met with Krishna, Krishna says, are you well? Is there anything that I can do for you? Brahma said, we will come to that, but first I have a question. Before I could come into the city, you had asked, which Brahma has come to see you? So are there any other Brahmas? So Krishna, he smiled and he meditated, and at that time, so many Lord Brahmas came. And some of them had 10 heads and 100 heads and 1,000 and 1,000,000 heads, and they all offered their respects to Krishna. And Krishna explained, there are so many Lord Brahmas. You are a very small Brahma. Your universe only has a diameter of 4 billion miles, so therefore you have 4 heads. But there are actually so many universes, some of them are much, much bigger than yours. So in that way, Lord Brahma could understand his position in relation to Krishna. And then for Shiva, we can tell a story. There is the story of Vrikasura. Vrikasura was thinking, he wanted some benediction, and he was thinking, who should I pray to this benediction for? And he met Narada Muni. And understanding the mind of this person, Narada Muni said, you should pray to Lord Shiva, because he's a very easily pleased person. And so that Vrikasura, he did a very horrible sacrifice. He created a sacrificial fire, and he would cut his own flesh and put the flesh of his body into that fire. And after a few days, he became frustrated. Where is Lord Shiva? I need to see Lord Shiva to get my benediction. And he was just about to cut off his own head. And just at that time, Prabhupada says, if any man is on the verge of suicide, anyone will want to save that person. So Shiva also, he wanted to save. Hey, please, no need to do that. So he came, he said, I will give you what you want. What kind of benediction do you want? And so Vrikasura said, I want the power that anyone whose head that I touch, that head will crack and that person will die. And so it's a very horrible benediction. But Shiva granted that benediction. And then Vrikasura, first thing he thought was, well, now I want to try it out. And so he wanted to touch the head of Shiva to see if his benediction worked. And so there was a great chase, and Shiva was running all around the universe, running away from that Vrikasura. Finally, he ended up in Svetadweep, which is like a Vaikuntha planet within this world where Narayan resides. And so Narayan at that time, he took the form of a brahmachari. And when that Vrikasura came there to try to catch Lord Shiva, Narayan in the form of that brahmachari, he greeted that demon and also asked, about his welfare, what are his needs. So he's saying, I got this benediction from Shiva, but now I want to try it out, and Shiva has run away from me. And so Narayan, in the form of this brahmachari, he said, are you sure he gave you that benediction? He says, I'm not really sure about that. Actually, that Shiva, he's like a different kind of person. When he got into a quarrel with Daksha, his father-in-law, then they made him the leader of the ghosts. And so there's always so many ghosts around him. He can cheat you. This guy is not like a clean guy or something. So he said, why don't you test it out on yourself to see if you really got that benediction? So anyway, so Vrikasura, he touched his own head, and in that way he died and the demon was defeated. So it is an example of how Shiva was protected by Krishna. And one more story I can tell. From Nectar of Devotion, the qualities of Krishna are given there. And one of Krishna's qualities is Krishna's attractive flute. So it says in Bhagavatam, the gopis tell Mother Yashoda, when your son plays on his flute, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Indra, although they are supposed to be the greatest learned scholars and personalities, all become bewildered. Although they are very great personalities, by hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, they humbly bow down and become grave from studying the sound vibrated. So, if you have some experience in music, if you're playing your flute in front of maybe like general public, then that's one thing. It may not be so hard to impress people. But when you're playing your flute in front of very learned pundits, people who are like really good musicians. And so Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, they are great scholars. They have a very deep understanding of music. But when Krishna plays his flute, they all become completely bewildered. So this point is to say, and I'm taking so much time to say it, even Krishna is the Lord of these great controllers, but Mother Yashoda is controlling him. How is it possible? And this verse is quoted from Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada quotes, the Lord displays the transcendental attribute of coming under the control of his devotees. This shloka will come in the 11th chapter. What's said there is, after Krishna took down, after he broke the Arjun trees, and the sons of Kuvera came out. So then there's some description how Krishna was a boy in the house of Nanda Maharaj. If Mother Yasoda needed something, like she would ask for a wooden plank to be seated on. So Krishna, even it was heavy, he would carry that plank for Mother Yasoda. And it says, when Nanda Maharaj, when he was worshipping Narayan, sometimes he would ask for his wooden slippers. And so Krishna would carry on his head the wooden slippers of his father. Sometimes he was asked to carry heavy things, and it would be too much for him, too much for Krishna. So just he would move his arms because he couldn't do it. So this person who is the Lord of all of these great controllers, how he is controlled by his devotee. Among the 64 qualities of Krishna, there is also this description. I think maybe we don't even have time for it, but Krishna is described. He is controlled by love. He is controlled by the love of his devotee. In Srila Prabhupada is discussing about Arjuna, how Krishna became the charioteer of Arjuna, and he quotes this verse from the first chapter when Arjuna asks Krishna, please draw my chariot between the two armies. Srila Prabhupada gives a very beautiful purport that also highlights this point of Krishna coming under the control of his devotee. Srila Prabhupada writes, although Lord Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, out of his causeless mercy, he was engaged in the service of his friend. He never fails in his affection for his devotees, and thus he is addressed here as infallible. As charioteer, he had to carry out the orders of Arjuna, and since he did not hesitate to do so, he is addressed as infallible. Although he had accepted the position of a charioteer for his devotee, his supreme position was not challenged. In all circumstances, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rishikesh, the Lord of the total senses. The relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render service to the Lord, and similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He takes greater pleasure in his pure devotees assuming the advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the giver of orders. Since he is master and everyone is under his orders, and no one is above him to order him, but when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure, although he is the infallible master in all circumstances. At that same verse, Srila Prabhupada writes in the Krishna book how he says, this same verse quoted from the 11th chapter that will come. Prabhupada writes, just to show the philosophers and the impersonalists, Krishna made this display how he has come under the control of the devotee. There's a story in Chaitanya Charitamrita of the illiterate Brahmin. He was told by his guru to read Bhagavad-Gita, but he wasn't very fluent in Sanskrit. And so people would laugh at him. They would mock him because a Brahmin should be a literate person. And so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met that person, he was crying. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, why are you crying? And he said, sir, when I look at the picture on the cover of my Bhagavad-Gita, how Arjuna is in the chariot and Krishna has taken the subordinate role of charioteer serving his devotee, then I become overwhelmed with this emotion. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he appreciated this person, he has understood the Bhagavad-Gita, how Krishna is serving his devotee. And finally, one more story. It describes in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Nimai Pandit, he was wandering in Navadvip as a very arrogant scholar. He was a very high-class Brahmin, and he became very learned at a very young age, and he loved to argue and debate. It said that was like the sport of Navadvip, was logicians debating with one another. And so Nimai Pandit, he would, just as he is walking on the road, he would like practically harass people. He would say like, hey Mukunda, or hey Gadadhar, come tell me, what did you learn today? Tell me about what studies you learned today. And whatever they said, Nimai Pandit, he would argue with them, and he would defeat their arguments, and no one could touch his arguments. And similarly, the Digvijay Pandit, he was a great learned Pandit who was famous for going to so many places and engaging in logical argument and debate. And he would defeat everybody, and he would take a certificate from them. You know, I have been defeated by the Digvijay Pandit. So he could show everybody, look, I'm a very big Pandit. So he came to Navadvip, and he met young Nimai. And Nimai, he was very young, and he was teaching grammar, which was considered not such a high subject after all. And so he asked that Pandit, we want to hear something from you. Maybe you can compose something about the river Ganga. And so that Pandit was such a brilliant person, he immediately composed 100 verses glorifying the Ganga. And after he was done reciting those verses, Nimai Pandit, he just picked out one verse and he said, when you have said this verse, I'm not sure about how you've used the grammar in this verse. And the Pandit, he was so astonished. How did you just memorize? I just said those verses so quickly. How did you even memorize anything? And he says, well, some people, they have different talents. I have this talent like that. So he found a mistake in that verse, and he completely humbled the Digvijay Pandit. Digvijay Pandit was defeated in front of Nimai Pandit. But that's not the story I want to tell. Ishvarapuri, he came to Navadvip at this time when Nimai was in this mood of an arrogant scholar. And he was very pure, beautiful Vaishnav. He would associate with the Dvaita Acharya and the other devotees discussing Krishna consciousness. At this time, Nimai Pandit was not yet manifesting his pastimes as a devotee. So Ishvarapuri, he would associate with the devotees, and he had written a book on Krishna Lila, and he would give lectures and speak about Krishna Lila for the pleasure of devotees. So at one time he met Nimai Pandit on the road, and he understood this person is a very learned scholar. And so he asked, he said, I've written this book on Krishna Lila, but I need an editor. I need someone to go through and find any mistakes that are in the book. And so Nimai Pandit, he was very respectful, and he was a little reluctant to do that. He said, sir, you're a great Vaishnav. Everything that you say is perfect because you're just speaking about Krishna. So it is not my place to try to find any fault with your writing. But Ishvarapuri, he insisted, no, I want to improve. If there's any grammatical mistakes in the book, I want it to be corrected. And so Nimai Pandit, he read through that book, and there was something he found there. He said, you have not used this verb correctly. And so he explained that to Ishvarapuri. This verb is not correct. It should be corrected. And so Ishvarapuri, he went back and he studied. He took some time to review the issue. And he came back and he said to Nimai Pandit, no, actually the way this verb has been used in my book, it is correct. I have checked everything, and you are making a mistake. And actually it was true. In that case, Nimai Pandit, he was defeated. Ishvarapuri, his book was correct, and the fault that Nimai Pandit thought that he had found, actually it was Nimai Pandit's mistake. So Nimai Pandit was very satisfied, very happy. Why? Because again, he had become under the control of his devotee. When it comes to the big materialists, when it comes to the arrogant demigods, then Krishna may have to cut them down, take away their pride, take away their opulence. But in this case, in the case of Ishvarapuri, the great devotee, he was very satisfied to be defeated. So maybe I'll leave it there if there are any questions or comments. Doesn't Prabhupada say, the first class intelligence is when you hear the instruction and then you can apply the instruction. And the second class intelligence, you hear the instruction, you see somebody else, how they've also been ruined by not following that instruction, and so then you can learn. And the third class, you also have to suffer. And the fourth class is, you never learn. You make this mistake again and again and again. I'm like that. Sorry? Yes?
You said Krishna loves to control by true devotee
Yes.
instead of devotee.
Yes.
So could you kindly define this true devotee?
Right. Okay, so Krishna is controlled by pure devotees. Right. There's something said there in our Nectar of Devotion. Bhakti has various characteristics, and one of them is sudurlabha. It is very rare. And specifically it refers to prema bhakti. Sadhana bhakti, there is bhava bhakti, there is prema bhakti. And Krishna is especially a little careful to bless someone with prema bhakti. Why is that? Because that prema bhakti can control Krishna. So Krishna is not so easy to execute that prema bhakti. Now, as far as our position, if we are not on that level, still there are many nice things said. One of the qualities mentioned about Krishna is that Krishna is very grateful. And the example that's given is Draupadi, when she was being disrobed. Right at that time, she threw her hands, she said, "Hey Govinda." And she surrendered to Krishna at that time. And Krishna says, Prabhupada writes, just by that one utterance, just because she said, "Hey Govinda," in that time of great need, so I am so indebted, I feel so much gratitude that she spoke like that. And Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is very grateful when we are chanting Hare Krishna mantra. We are also chanting his names. He will be grateful for that. He will not forget our chanting. So it's not the same point how Krishna is controlled. But still, by gratitude, a person is also, there's some control. If you feel very grateful to somebody, then you feel an obligation to them. So Krishna will feel some obligation if we will sincerely call to him by serving him, by singing his names like that. So that's one answer I can give to this question. Oh, maybe last question, because I'm sorry to go over time.
Thank you for the question. As you mentioned that Yashoda was pure devotee. So I have a question. Like after being a pure devotee, like she was showing a stick as a supreme personality of Godhead. So that was not a sin, like maybe directly or
Say again? It wasn't what?
sin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how it is possible for a pure devotee like showing a stick to Krishna, like supreme personality of Godhead?
Even when Yashoda is chastising, it is done out of pure love. I think Prabhu was saying the other day, he was talking about the definition of anyabhilashita shunyam and explaining how perfect that definition of pure bhakti is, because it is not too inclusive, it is not too exclusive. Even though she is threatening Krishna with the stick, and Krishna is becoming terrified because of that. Her mood is in motherly love. She is chastising her son, and so that is her pure devotional service. And it's not only that it is not a sin. Krishna enjoys that more. We heard that here in this purport in the Bhagavad-Gita. Krishna is enjoying more how the devotee is controlling him in so many ways, is defeating him, controlling him. Right. Krishna is fighting with devotees. Panchagoda Prabhu is saying Bhishma Dev, throwing arrows at each other. And maybe it's when Bhishma Dev is shooting at Krishna, Krishna is accepting it like a devotee offering flowers. Because that was their relationship. So it's not, shoot an arrow, not your position to do that. Or if you want to But these things are there in pure devotional service, they are possible. Maybe we'll leave it there. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.
Hare Ram.